Hi guys, welcome back to Life More Colorful. I'm Letitia and I garden in Florida, zone 8B/9A. I am in the process of removing my raised beds and I wanted to take a minute to explain the reasons why raised beds don't work for me. The number one reason is weeds. In Florida, we have really intense weed pressure. We have dollarweed and torpedo grass, which both grow via rhizomes underground. So this bed is a weedy mess, but it's a good example of what I'm dealing with. This is a dollarweed. So every time I try to pull these up, it just breaks off at the stem, leaving the whole root underground. The only way I can pull the root is to dig down all the way to the bottom of my bed. And I can't do that when I have plants in the bed. It's much easier to weed in my in-ground garden beds since I can just give a gentle tug and then pull until I reach the end. Hello. The second reason I'm getting rid of my raised beds is because I find it really difficult to harvest from them. It may be a me problem, but it seems like every time I reach into the center of the bed to harvest something, I'm breaking off the foliage or the fruit from the plants around the perimeter of the bed. And sure, I could change how I plant, like plant only the tall things in the center or the back and leave plant shorter things around the perimeter so I don't have that problem. But then that means that I have like 1/2 to 3/4 of the space available in my raised bed to plant the things that I most want to plant in my garden. And those are tomatoes and peppers, really. The third reason I'm getting rid of the raised beds is because I think they create a lot of wasted space. So for every 4x4 bed, I need to have a 10x10 area so that I have enough pathway to harvest and maintain those beds. And sure, if I have a grid of raised beds, I can borrow that path space from the adjacent beds, so it's not fully 10x10 for every bed, but my yard is only about 28 feet from the house to the fence. So to have a whole line of raised beds, I think would be really imposing in my small yard. And that brings me to my fourth point, which is that I don't love the look of raised beds. It's sort of a culmination of all of the previous points. Like this one here, I know is a weedy mess. But that's because it's really difficult for me to weed without disturbing the plants. It's really difficult for me to harvest from. Even fully in production, I think that the raised beds look unkempt. There's a lot of spillover and it's difficult for me to keep them looking tidy compared to my in-ground garden beds where I have where the plants can kind of use each other for support. I can constantly plant things to take over for the dead or dying plants. And I also really love the varying textures and colors that I have in my in-ground garden beds compared to what I have in my raised beds. I love to mix ornamentals and edibles. And so it's just, I find that it is easier for me to recreate that in the ground versus in a raised bed. And as I mentioned before, I live in Florida, which means I'm lucky enough to be able to grow year-round. One of the main pros that I hear and read from people advocating for raised beds is that the soil warms up faster in the spring. Gotta switch on, that one's getting tired. The soil warming up faster in the spring is not a good thing for me. What I'm planting in the winter are onions, brassicas, lettuce, and when the soil warms up, those plants will bolt. They will flower and go to seed, and that means I don't get my harvest. But raised beds are not all bad for me. I love being able to directly bury my compostables right in the raised beds. I bury my veggie scraps. I also bury meat byproducts like the fat drained from ground beef, for example, or bacon fat, or trimmings from chicken. And I've never had a problem with rodents digging up my raised beds, mice or cats. And it seems like the organic material, when I bury it directly in the raised bed, it converts to compost much faster than it does in my other compost area, the banana pit. I also really enjoy growing potatoes, both sweet potatoes and white potatoes, in my raised beds. It's so much easier to not leave any potatoes behind when they're growing in a confined space. So all that said, I am removing the 2 raised beds that I showed you, and I'm going to be converting this space to more of a keyhole style garden. I'm also going to be relocating the cinder block garden that I have in my patio area now. The cinder block garden will be for potatoes, and I'm reclaiming that patio space, and I'm gonna add in some new pavers and maybe make like a little more decorative patio area. Today is not a good filming day, it's cold. I'm not removing all of my raised beds right now because I do have a lot of soil mix and nowhere to put it besides a raised bed. So I'm going to be consolidating for now. I'm really excited to get started with my keyhole in-ground garden and to relocate the cinder block raised bed. I just need to figure out what to do with this monster oregano. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.